welcome back to the Not Carrie Bradshaw YouTube channel. In this video, I am very giggly and excited to recap episode 5 of And Just Like That. I was going to combine 5 and 6 so that we could just, kind of play catch up, but episode 5 deserves its own situation because episode 5 feels like Sex and the City, the OG, okay? It feels like And Just Like That has found its rhythm. Let's just get into it. So, okay, first of all, a friend of mine did have a critique, and a couple of my friends have messaged me with the concern that they feel like this show is desperately attempting to make up for its past, and that there's a very concerted effort to give all the women a person of color, to build a relationship with a person of color across the spectrum of identities and race and all of those things. And it just feels too on the nose for them. It feels like they're pandering or whatever. I will say this. Number one, the OG Sex and the City, while it was lacking in diversity, I think that it was also quite true that in the lives of women like that, they don't have friends who aren't like them. Those, from what I have seen, even living in New York, those friend groups tend to be quite homogenous. Like there isn't a lot of diversity within the friend groups of white women of that age, from my observation. Even when I think about different places where I've worked, I am pretty sure that I'm the only Black person, or I'm one of a handful of Black people that some of those white people knew, okay, and still know to this day. I, being from Atlanta, am still new to having non-Black friends. I can count on one hand the number of white friends that I have. And as much as we criticize Sex and the City, the OG, for not being diverse enough, I think that that is actually true to life. Now, the way that they treated the characters of color, absolutely, that could have been done better. But said that to say, is it wrong for them to try to rectify that now, to make a show that's more reflective of the real world? I don't really know that I have a complaint about that so much as it is a valid observation. I can't say that I'm mad about it. And I am very cautious about watching the way that they treat the Black characters. And I also want to say, per the last episode, as sweet as I think it is that Charlotte stood up for Lisa Todd Wexley, you ain't really about to talk to nobody's Black mama like that. I don't care how hoity-toity they are. You're not really going to sit IRL at somebody's dinner table, and talk to their Black mama like that, especially when this is like her son's house. You're not finna, as a white woman, get away with talking to nobody's Black mama like that, but it was cute. Now, moving on. Before we get to the real big plot of this episode, we have to cover the B plot. So Charlotte's child has decided that they want to be known as Rock instead of Rose. And this was made clear to TikTok, to the people at school, to everyone except for Charlotte and Harry. So they are kind of freaking out about overreacting versus underreacting. What do we need to do to be supportive parents? Should the school have communicated this more to us? What I will say to this, being a person who is not trans, who is not non-binary, who is a cis-het woman, and I don't have kids, I think that all of the totality of exploring those conversations is very new to everyone. And I think that we have to give space to parents who are willing and who desire to be supportive of their children's journey on their identity. Give them space to figure that out and to understand, okay, well, what does all of this mean? There is no handbook on parenting. So there especially isn't a handbook on parenting for children who are a part of that community when they have parents who aren't and who aren't super familiar with these things. Like, these are still relatively new terms for a lot of people. So I can understand them being very confused and just being like, well, when was anyone going to tell us? Because like Harry said, it's some bullshit to be told something about your own kid that everybody knew except for you. Like, I imagine that's probably like being told something about your spouse that everyone knew except for you. So I'm still, you know, buckled in to see how this storyline plays out. So Carrie goes into her house with Seema. Is this the first time that y'all have ever seen Carrie's house? Like the entrance, like the I don't ever remember seeing that before. And I was just like, I feel like I was exposed to something new. I was like, what house is she going to? This is Carrie's house. And she has what she's calling old lady back. And what that made me want to do is take out my yoga mat and do some Pilates like ASAP, because I don't want to have to go through that. So Seema, being the boss bitch, like take charge kind of friend that she is, immediately makes Carrie an appointment with an orthopedist who is her cousin. They find out that Carrie isn't, you know, suffering from, you know, old age and, you know, your body just changes. She actually had like a birth defect or whatever in her hip. So Carrie has to have hip surgery, which is in effect something that, you know, typically happens to older people. So the ladies get together and decide like how they are going to partner together to provide Carrie with the care that she needs after the operation. So of course, Charlotte makes a spreadsheet. Charlotte is either a Virgo or a Taurus. I'm gonna look and find out, because that's that kind of energy. So I don't know even where to begin. Okay. As an aside, have y'all noticed that when Charlotte talks to Rose/Rock, Lily's just in the background? Why Lily ain't never got nothing to say about anything? Like, Lily is just like with her head in a book and like her headphones on. Is that intentional? Are we going to find out at a later time that Lily feels like neglected or something because, you know, she's just like the easier child, quote unquote? Like, is that intentional? Because Lily really just be like, girl, and just like moves on and that's it. So I have questions. So Carrie is high on her post-op meds, and, you know, she's still a part of this podcast, which one of my friends commented that he just does not feel like this is realistic, that Carrie would have never in real life been on a podcast of this nature, and that this is just so intentional of them driving home this point that like these ladies are now becoming more progressive. Slide in the comments and let me know what you guys think about that. I think we just kind of have to suspend belief a little bit. But anyway, so she's high and she's being real vulnerable and loose and tells the story about how Samantha fished out her diaphragm that got stuck up her vagina many moons ago. And she names Samantha by name. Charlotte is there, and Charlotte tells her, you might want to give Samantha a heads up that you did that just in case she has an issue with it. So Carrie texts Samantha later in the episode. They have a good exchange, but which was such a Samantha exchange, and it did make me miss her a little bit. Like, I could hear/see her saying those things to Carrie in my mind. And Carrie does the thing that people do when they're trying to reestablish connection and says, I miss you. And Samantha left her ass on red, okay? And my heart sank for her a little bit. But hey, at least she tried. She did the honorable thing, letting her know, like, hey, girl, I told about how you fisted me. Good. Good for her. Okay, so let's get into it. So Shay visits Carrie in the hospital unannounced, and they are in the process of helping Carrie to pee. Now, if you have ever had a major surgery, peeing after anesthesia is a chore, okay? I don't know if it's just like the synapses aren't going or like whatever, but for Carrie, she's on some pretty intense pain meds, so she can't really feel anything all the way, but the ladies are helping her to go pee. Shay calls to say like, hey, I'm here, wanted to bring her dinner. Carrie is like, make them go away. I don't want to be bothered. Miranda's thrilled because Miranda really wants to see Shay anyway. So Miranda goes and has dinner with Shay. They have a really good rapport. They hang out, whatever, whatever. Boom. Okay, cute. As an aside, I want Brady's girlfriend to go home. I'm sick of that little bitch. She too grown. And I don't even like saying that about kids, but like she's doing too much. She's too comfortable in their house. Take your ass home. Is you putting in on bills? And I'm just like, what kind of man are they raising Brady to be? Someone in the comments said, oh, Brady is going to be a lot of fun to work with. And I was like, exactly. These are the kinds of men who or the kinds of people who you struggle to work with because they feel very entitled and that the world should just bow to their whims. I just want to say Miranda's failing as a parent. I'm going to just say it. Steve and Miranda. Also, Steve is I loved Steve. He was one of my favorite characters, but he's just so in the background of everything. He's not really getting a lot of screen time or a lot of input. And it's like, hey, do you think that we're raising him okay? Bitch, do you? Is you gonna say something? Like, don't just keep asking questions. Make a declarative statement. This shit is weird. Fix it, Jesus. Fix it, Steve and Miranda. Steve, say it, do something. I'm tired. So anyway, Shay also then shows up to Carrie's house unannounced again. Why Shay keep just popping up? Why does that keep happening? So she shows up with tequila and food, but Carrie is passed out in her bed from her drugs. But Carrie didn't take the full dosage of her drugs. So Miranda and Shay are taking shots, and Miranda's having the time of her life. Miranda then asked Shay to blow her a shotgun again. And things get physical. We saw this coming, pun intended. Okay, so things get really hot and heavy between Miranda and Shay. At the same time, Carrie once again has to pee, but Carrie, due to the logistics of her apartment, looks up and sees Shay and Miranda having active, passionate sex in her kitchen. And she is so embarrassed and so mortified that she decides that she's going to try to pee in this bottle to save them the embarrassment. Carrie, babe, why not just say, hey, hate to interrupt, but this is my house. I need to be taken care of. I gotta pee. Can y'all put this shit on hold? Why not say so? If I have had hip surgery, I'm not pissing on myself for anybody. Y'all knew the risk that y'all was taking having sex in my kitchen. I don't care about you being embarrassed. Bitch, come help me to the bathroom. I'm not about to pee on myself for nobody. I'm not about to pee in my bed for nobody. How do you even get pee out your mattress, bruh? Like, you pee through your sheet. How do you clean urine out of a mat? I am so stressed out. Like, this scene was so stressful for me. And Carrie just looked so sad trying to pee. Meanwhile, Miranda is getting her, like Shay is giving Miranda the business. And I was just overwhelmed by the whole thing. But this was a very Sex in the City scene. I mean, this felt like Sex in the City. This felt like some shit that would happen to Samantha or something. Like, I was here for it. I'm sorry. It was a great scene. I cringed the whole time, but it was a great scene. So Shay has to go because Shay has a show, and she's like, you know, hit me up if you want to kick it again, but I got to get the fuck out of here. And Miranda is just flying high and tries to walk in to Carrie's bedroom like ain't nothing happened. And Carrie is like, bitch, I know you lying to me. I know you lying. I just fully saw you have sex with my boss. And Miranda's kind of like, yeah, you know, like being very, well, Miranda was high, to be fair. And this is finally the come to Jesus moment that like Carrie has kind of been having the conversation with Miranda, like, do you have an issue? And Miranda's like, no. There is this thing though that I think about when it comes to a person having a substance abuse issue when it comes to alcohol. What makes the difference between, oh, you should probably dial it back on your drinking versus you have a problem? And that's what they were kind of navigating earlier in the episode. But now Carrie is seeing like Miranda is not Miranda, which is true because Miranda, season after season, has been the reliable, responsible friend. If you remember, this is kind of to me like a callback to that time on the show when Miranda fell in her bathroom and Aiden had to come to her rescue because Carrie was, I can't remember what Carrie was doing, but she sent Aiden in her stead to help Miranda up. And it was a whole big blow up of like, you don't send your boyfriend to come help me when I'm naked on my bathroom floor. Like, I always show up for you. This is a huge departure from Miranda being the strong friend, check on your strong friend, who everyone has always been able to really, really rely on. And Miranda, you know, Carrie's like, what is going on with you? And Miranda just, you know, is like, I'm not happy. I am unhappy. And I have been unhappy for a really long time. That was a little bit disappointing for me because Miranda was the character who, as I got older, I started to identify with a little bit more in terms of Miranda just wasn't as boy crazy as the other ladies were. And she was just a little bit more sensible. And to find out that the character that I started to identify with more as I got older has actually really been unhappy for a long time, I felt really bad for her. And I felt like, damn, like, so for the women who really identified with Miranda, like, I wonder, like, are they like unhappy in their lives now? I mean, I'm not, but that was kind of disappointing that, you know, the character who didn't really put marriage and kids first is actually really unhappy. And I'm happy that she pointed out that, like, yeah, I started drinking more in the pandemic like everyone did, and I just never stopped. And, you know, Carrie is like, well, what about the sex? And she's like, that I liked. That I can continue. Miranda gets home I guess the next day, and she's listening to Shay on the podcast and, you know, making herself what I think was an old fashioned, and I think I could actually go for one of those right now. And she gets a notification from Amazon that while she thought that Charlotte anonymously sent her a book about quitting drinking, and that's been her belief the whole episode, she actually drunkenly sent that to herself. Do you know how blackout drunk you got to be to order some shit for yourself that you don't even remember ordering? Bitch, have I done that? I don't have a problem. Anyway, and this is Miranda's wake-up call for herself that, like, damn, bitch, I really might have a problem. And so she starts, you know, pouring out all of her bottles and the things. I also want to say that when Carrie started physical therapy and she was working with a physical therapist, Travis, and opted to pay out of pocket for him as opposed to the other guy who we aren't going to comment on aesthetics, but y'all saw what I saw. I was like, is Carrie ready to get back out there already? Or is she just, you know, it's okay to enjoy a little visual. No tea, no shade. I hope she gets something from it. I was also really, really happy for Carrie that at the end, she got to put on her sparkly heels, because I'm going to tell you, I would be devastated if I couldn't wear heels. I own flats. I've actually started investing more in quality flats, but they're not my favorite. They're not my favorite. And the devastation I would feel if I couldn't wear heels, I cannot put into words for you. So this, thus far, has been my favorite episode. It was mess. It was cringe. It was ridiculous. But it felt like Sex and the City. So I really enjoyed this episode. Please slide in the comments. Let me know what you guys think. I do not think the show is without critique. The show is what it is. What I can say is that I'm entertained by it, but I was never looking to this series to be a documentary on how people, on the proper way for people to go about being more progressive or having a more diverse friend group. That ain't what I came here for. I came here to be entertained. Thus far, I am entertained, but I am keeping my eye out for the way the Black and non-Black people of color characters are treated on the show. I'm still here for Seema. I want a friend like Seema. I also was wondering, do I have a friend who would help me pee? I know I have a friend who would help me pee because I had to help several bitches pee in their wedding gowns, okay? Several. So I know I have friends that would help me pee, but I don't know if I have a friend who would do what Samantha did for Carrie, except I did ask one of my friends because I was curious. And I do have a friend who would do that for me. But prior to, I was like, who would really... Anyway, do y'all have a friend who would do that for you? Pull a Samantha? Anyway, talk to you guys soon. I'm going to recap episode 6 very shortly, so stay tuned. Thank you for joining. Be sure to like and comment and share and subscribe. And I'm sorry if you can hear my neighbors. I will do my best to reduce the noise background, but you can also send me some money so that I can live somewhere where you can't hear my neighbors via my Patreon. And the link is in the episode description. Okay.